Welcome to the Bladtcast. Very excited to be welcoming back to the show Frank Hannon. Of course, you know him from Tesla, and he has a great new song that we'll talk a lot about called Fool's Delight, which is available wherever you get all your streaming. And you can also find it. There's a video for it on his YouTube channel, and of course, frankhannon.com. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Hey, Christian, it's great to be on the Bladtcast. I appreciate you taking the time as well, man. It's a busy time of year. Everybody's trying to get.
It is indeed a busy time of year. And, Jody, the publicist who always puts us in touch, mentioned that she had you. And this is a crazy week. But I'm like, wait, if I can talk to Frank Hannon, I'm going to make the time. So I'm glad that this worked out because it is, of course, Christmas season, whatever holiday season anybody celebrates. But, on the Bladtcast, we do celebrate Kissmas because I think Gene Simmons insists if you ever signed up for the Kiss Army, then throughout the rest of your life, you have to celebrate Kissmas. So our video audience sees a little Kiss and Santa with me. And I was just thinking, there's a handful of to me, really good, rocking Christmas songs. The Kinks' Father Christmas comes to mind as a favorite.
My phone freaked out. You said a handful of.
Yeah, I was just saying there's a handful of good, legitimately really good rocking Christmas songs. So I'm thinking the Kinks' Father Christmas, Slade has that Merry Christmas song. Are there any that, and look, there's a great place for the standards, but are there any rocking Christmas songs that you're like, oh, it might be a little bit corny that it's a Christmas song, but you've always really liked maybe just as a kid or even now?
Well, I love Jingle Bell Rock. I do love that song. And, I think Brian Setzer, man, he does a great Christmas rendition. I like White Christmas too. I like that song, and Jimi Hendrix did a version. I'm looking sideways because my phone is sideways. It's weird. Jimi Hendrix version of Little Drummer Boy with his whammy bar and his guitar that he used to throw in. I think there's a video of Jimi Hendrix playing a Christmas party somewhere in England or something. And I think he plays rum bum 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 with this Stratocaster whammy bar.
Yeah. I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that Hendrix, obviously he was great. Just his mind worked in a way that was different than maybe any human that ever walked the earth. I always love hearing about the day Sgt. Pepper's came out, he brought it home and he learned the song and he played it the next day. And
with Paul McCartney in the audience.
Yeah. Exactly. And he's like, wait, I don't even remember how to play this. So it's so cool to think about stuff like that. Now, has there ever been, I don't know, an idea kicked around, a temptation for either you as a solo artist or Tesla to do, maybe not write a new Christmas song, but, oh, hey, it might be fun. I mean, I'm wearing a Christmas sweater for Alice Cooper. Even he did a Santa Claus is Coming to Town at one point. Was there ever any consideration, or was it just the band was like, nah, I don't know, that doesn't really feel like us, does it?
Well, I'll be honest. Tesla has never talked about doing a Christmas song. Jeff Keith being the lead singer of Tesla.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it still may not happen. Maybe next Christmas. It's obviously too late. The problem with releasing Christmas songs is people don't realize you got to record them in July for them to be ready to be released by Christmas. There's so much time and preparation that it takes. And so it's hard to find the Christmas spirit in July to actually write or record a song, But we did do Silent Night. I did do an acoustic solo version of Silent Night on the guitar one year. And for 2 years in a row, me as a solo artist, I did a Christmas show in my hometown of Sacramento, California. And there's some video footage of that. And I personally want to record Jingle Bell Rock. I do.
I hope whether it's the Frank Hannon band or with Tesla or with somebody else, I hope that a little bit before next Christmas, you and I are talking about your version of Jingle Bell Rock that is out there. And
I'll tell you what, it's a commitment. I'm going to commit to you right now, Christian, that I'm going to record Jingle Bell Rock and have it ready for next Christmas. Okay.
I love that. I'll see if, when I talked to Jeff Keith, I actually made some headlines from this show because I just casually offhanded asked if there were any plans for another Tesla record. You kind of ask everybody that. And his answer wasn't like, oh yeah, it's called this, we're going to do that. And it wasn't even that. It was just like, yeah, we're thinking about it. And all of a sudden there's headlines. There's all those great rock news websites that are like, oh, we got something to write about. So I hope to get Frank Hannon promises. No, Frank Hannon guarantees version of Jingle Bell Rock in time for Christmas 2024. We'll
oh God, I can see it now. Blabbermouth's gonna have a field day with it.
That's who I'm sending it to first. And the fact that we said Blabbermouth, it's like we're asking them. But if Blabbermouth does print that article, you know what we should also ask them to talk about is your new single, Frank Hannon's Fool's Delight. It's great what you got promised for the next year, but let's talk about what's going on now.
Exactly. Well, I put Fool's Delight out this month with Christmas in mind because, like I had mentioned, I didn't do my annual Christmas show in my hometown this year because of family reasons, being on the East Coast now. I'm in Florida spending Christmas with my family here. So I wanted to put out a new song as a gift to my diehard heavy metal hippie fans. And this song leans more on the hippie side, not necessarily the heavy metal, but more of the hippie side of my music. That's what heavy metal hippie is, Judas Priest and Grateful Dead. I love all kinds of music and everything in between. And as an artist, I'm always creating different styles. And this particular style is a style of music that I love, which is singer-songwriter storytelling music. And Fool's Delight is a story that is a lot of fun. And so I wanted to get it out in time for Christmas and in time for these Almond Betts family revival shows that I just got done doing.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that. They do that not in Florida. It's somewhere in the South, though, right? They do a few shows every year for that.
It was in Florida. My 3 shows were in Florida. A few years ago, they did it on the West Coast. When I first joined them at the Fillmore in San Francisco, they sold out the Beacon Theater this year. They do it every December. So it's kind of a holiday tradition in a sense. I was talking to Devin, and he likes to do the family revival in December. Allman, and they do the tribute to their dads, Greg Allman and Dickie Betts, who had birthdays in December. So it's honoring Greg Allman and Dickie Betts, their music and the timeless music of the Allman Brothers. And if you listen to my song Fool's Delight, it's influenced by that particular influence in my heart of music, which has, slide guitar and acoustic guitar and real rootsy music.
Yeah, it definitely had a little bit of that feel. And I like that you refer to it as singer-songwriter because it is definitely telling a story, and I like sort of it's very casual. And, I've heard enough of your solo stuff that I know it's not necessarily always going to be on the heavy metal side or the heavy metal hippie side, but this sort of very laid back, borderline country. I mean, I guess it is country. I don't know. It's so hard to keep track, but I like what you said in terms of the heavy metal hippie, because when it comes down to it, most of us, it's like, if the touring works or they're in your town, you might see Metallica and Paul McCartney in the same week. And who knows, back in the day, maybe you would have also seen Prince if he came to town. And I think everybody, it's easy to get kind of pigeonholed and like, oh, I like this kind of music. But I think everybody, it has a much wider stretch of what they like. You know what I mean?
Well, some people do, not everybody. Some people are only metalheads and some people only like jazz and that's it, but people like yourself, I'm glad to hear that you like a little bit of everything, and everybody loves the Beatles, right?
Yeah.
And even the Beatles have a song like Helter Skelter, which is like the heaviest metal song, you know, of the era. But then they got a beautiful song like Yesterday, you know, or a beautiful thing like Blackbird. You hear Paul McCartney singing Blackbird, but then you also hear Paul McCartney singing Helter Skelter.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so that's kind of my style. You know, my favorite artist, if you listen to Jimi Hendrix, he's got Foxy Lady, he's got Purple Haze, he's got Voodoo Child, but then he also has Little Wing and Castles Made of Sand. You know, as an artist, you have the freedom to create whatever you want when you want it, and that's kind of the artistic liberty that I take when I'm doing my solo stuff. Now, Tesla is a group, and we are a group that is geared towards Jeff Keith's vocals and how he sings and what he feels, because he's the lyricist of that band ultimately, and he's got to deliver it. So that's a different thing, but it's great. It's all great, and I'm just very grateful that 1976, I was 10 years old, and the 70s had the best music for a young 10-year-old kid to get turned on to. And it was an escape for me, man. It got me out of the ghetto. It got me out of a lot of trouble because I was playing guitar instead of like stealing cars.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, there's so many that I could list off, but to think about being 10 and having a guitar in your hand the year that Rocks from Aerosmith and Kiss Destroyer come out, you know, I mean, that's, you know, among so many others, but those are the two that come to mind right away for me. And yeah, it's, you know, and a lot of those bands, you know, I was born in 1976, so I'm discovering a lot of these bands later in the 80s, but then just the wealth of the back catalog. And, you know, it was crazy to think about like that, you know, the Aerosmith who put out Rocks is the Aerosmith who did Dude Looks Like a Lady. You know, I think that there's something great about both of those things, but you're just like, wow, what a wild story those guys had, you know?
They had a long, tumultuous, changing career. And every 10 years, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, going back to the 50s, okay, those decades had a different culture and a different generation and a different style. I mean, look at the difference between the 50s and then the 60s. Yeah. Two decades. I'm trying to find my fingers. 2 decades there with completely different styles. And then you had the 70s, and then the 80s was a completely different style. So a band like Aerosmith, to navigate through that and, you know, create as much as they did is phenomenal to survive that, you know. And then I look at Tesla, and I can't believe that we survived all that shit as well, going from the 80s into the 90s into the 2000s and all the way until now that we're almost in the middle of the 2020s. It's freaking crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about because I know the band Tesla's been together for 40 years. The first album, not quite at 40 years, but what, 2026 it'll be. And yeah, I can. What's that?
I said, yeah, we're getting there. 3 decades.
Yeah, you're exactly. You're getting to that. And yeah, the idea, and you know, they're part of that history as essentially did with Aerosmith. There's a part of the time where Tesla was broken up, but you guys have been back together for so long now. It's easy to kind of forget. Maybe not for you guys in the band, but for those of us as fans, you know, obviously there was that kind of tough period for a lot of bands, just sort of figuring out what to do, you know. And I've talked to you, I've talked to Jeff, I've talked to Brian about sort of that moment in time when the Bust a Nut record comes out. And it was like, I think it's a great record, but it almost didn't matter how good it was because you know, a lot of people are like, yeah, that's not what we're playing right now. MTV's like, hey, we're not doing that anymore, you know? So it's very disappointing to think about, you know, sort of that there wasn't a bigger acceptance. And we're just talking about like rock music, you know. It's like I've talked to plenty of artists. It's like I loved an Alice in Chains records and Nirvana record, but also you know, a new Tesla album, a new Kiss album, whatever came out. I'm like, oh, this is all great. But I guess radio and record companies, they don't really kind of see big pictures like that, do they, Frank?
Well, everything changed. The radio stations got bought by big corporations, and they weren't really owned by people that were running them anymore. They were being controlled by bigger forces, you know, and the styles of music changed, and the technology changed. You know, this phone that I'm holding in my hand right here basically has changed the landscape of everything as well. So I forgot what your question or
No,
what
well,
we were.
the point sort of was, it's like there's sort of a speed bump that, you know, I talked to a lot of bands, a lot of artists from the 80s and 90s, sort of about just that sort of moment in time. And years ago, I talked to Mark Slaughter about it, and he was like, yeah, I mean, I wasn't mad at Alice in Chains. They put out great music. You know, it was just frustrating to feel like you were also putting out great music, but figuring out how to get people to hear it just changed sort of overnight, you know?
Well, yeah, there was always an obstacle of when the radio station's formats changed from to rock to active rock or whatever. Then they, you know, like even my best friends at radio could no longer play Tesla because they were being told to play something else. And there's only so many minutes in a day that they have to fill up. So there's a limit. Kind of like us with our set list. There's only so many songs we could put in a 90-minute set. So, you know, there's only so much shelf space on the shelves for albums at Walmart. You know what I mean? It's so, yeah, there's obstacles, and every 10 years it's different and stuff. But luckily for us, the songs, and when people still hear What You Give or Love Song or Modern Day Cowboy, you know, they still can come to a show. And speaking of that, we've got a ton of shows booked next year already. We're doing another Las Vegas residency.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Frank, because I had the graphic ready to go. I was gonna talk about the third Las Vegas takeover at the House of Blues. I live in LA, but when you guys did the first stint, we were in Vegas with my kids for spring break, so I was able to go to one of those shows, and it was great because it wasn't like one of those, you know, there were a couple of, like, I don't even want to say deep tracks, but like songs you hadn't heard in a while that were for, you know, the diehard fans, but it wasn't like anybody was walking out of the House of Blues that night like, oh man, they didn't really play the songs I wanted, you know? So you guys hit everything. But I think that having looked at the set lists from when you do these sort of little residencies there, it seems like there's a conscious effort, like, yeah, each night let's throw in one or two that maybe people aren't expecting.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we don't have a shortage of songs, but we do have a shortage of time. So
right.
In order to make each night interesting, we keep about 70% of the show for the diehard people that are flying in to hear Little Susie and Love Song and What You Give and Signs and Modern Day Cowboy. And then for the other 30% of the diehards that want to hear Lazy Days, Crazy Nights, or Changes, or We're No Good Together, or Getting Better, something a little deeper, you know, even Shine Away we put in the set list, or Song and Emotion, you know, we'll rotate those every night. So it's a little bit different, but it's also a little bit the same.
Well, I'm going to put the same bug in your ear that I put into Jeff Keith's ear. Anytime you feel like you want to dust off Talk About It, that would always be a fun one, I think. I don't think even on the Psychotic Supper tour, I remember seeing you guys do that live. So that would always be a fun one just for me.
Yeah,
but
we did do it on that tour. And believe me, we did a lot of token about it.
Well, you know, a little token never hurt no one, though. So you see, that's really the point there. And so there'll be 5 shows, April 5th through the 13th. But obviously that's not everything. So just go to teslatheband.com to find out when Tesla will be in your neck of the woods, you know.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. But I do want to talk a little bit more, since, you know, the new thing is Fool's Delight, the new solo song. Now, you did a video for it, which people can find on your YouTube channel. And, you know, the way everything works, it's like, yeah, you just kind of go into YouTube and you type something in, you know, and you'll find it. But talk a little bit, like, you know, I talked about how it's kind of a laid back, you know, kind of easygoing sort of song. The video kind of really has that feeling too, you know. I mean, for our video audience, And, you know, Frank, you could tell me right now, oh yeah, you can play my song, no worries. And I could still get struck by YouTube for playing the song. So we're just going to look at it, but our audio audience will get to hear some of it. But anyway, talk a little bit about kind of this great idea where you're like, I'm just going to pull my motorcycle over the side of the road and play Fool's Delight.
Hey, I'm watching it right now. That's pretty cool.
You're like, hey, that guy's good. That. Look at this guitar player. This guy's fantastic.
Well, no, I'm just, there's my barn. That's my barn right there.
Nice.
That's my neighbor's barn next door, right next door to where I live.
Is your neighbor's barn more photogenic than yours? That's why you went over to your neighbor's barn.
Yes, exactly. But that's Northern California, man, right there. You know, we're from up north outside of Sacramento in the hills of Folsom. And all of that footage right there was shot the day after that. Right there. There's the gig. See those people there? Those are my diehard heavy metal hippies. And that's Out of Bounds Brewery. And Out of Bounds Brewery is a place that I play in Folsom. And they made my heavy metal hippie double IPA beer for me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a very strong beer that we sold on the Monsters of Rock cruise. And back when I was drinking and making beer, they made the beer for me. And that's where I shot this video, was at their brewery.
Well, I've never been fortunate enough to go on the Monsters of Rock cruise, but when I talk to people who have and I hear stories about it, I feel like the one thing that they need is stronger beer. You know, that the beer there is just not doing it enough. They need to drink a little bit more. But that's great that you were able to sell it there. Look, it always sounds like a great time. Go ahead.
I'll tell you a funny story. So that where I'm playing in this video right there, see that? It says Out of Bounds.
Yeah, sure.
That's a brewery that made my beer that I personally picked all the hops for and created the beer with them hand in hand, called Heavy Metal Hippie. Well, we shipped several pallets out to Florida for the Monsters of Rock cruise. And I'll tell you a funny story. 2,000 cans of beer. And they sold out of it in the first 2 days. And I was getting phone calls from people on the sail away when the ship was pulling out of port that were hammered on this beer, because it was a double. It was like 8.5% alcohol, and it tastes really good. In fact, Eddie Trunk and we cracked one open, and like within 10 seconds, we're like, holy shit, we're getting buzzed off this already.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
so much so that I've quit drinking. Okay, I have to say I quit drinking because it got too much.
Well, and you know, obviously that's it's good to realize when it's been too much, but also maybe you just realized like, well, I made the beer that's, you know, it's never going to get better than that one time opening the can with Eddie Trunk. So let's quit while we're ahead. So was that just brewed for the cruise? Is that something that's still available at that brewery, or is that something that's in the past, Frank?
Yeah, it's available on tap at the brewery. But look at those people there. See, those are my friends, man. Those people there are my diehards. They came to my Fool's Delight video shoot gig in Folsom, California. And since I quit drinking, I was going to make a non-alcoholic beer, and I'm still working on it. And guess what I'm going to call it?
Fool's Delight?
Yeah.
Look at that. Hey, I think you might have a good commercial for like an internet video to internet commercial to put out there, you know. So
I'm thinking, but it's got to taste good. It can't taste like this other non-alcoholic beer that's out there. So I'm going to work on it. I'm hopefully going to work on it with Out of Bounds, where I shot that video, and hopefully I'll be able to create a really good non-alcoholic beer called Fool's Delight. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great idea. And I think that, for people who don't drink anymore, but then also, some of us are maybe more lightweights than others. At a certain point in the night, you're like, hey, turn to something that's a non-alcohol, but, not O'Doul's, unless they want to sponsor this show, in which case I'll say that O'Doul's is great. Frank, so you talked about how you do, you'll do shows in Sacramento and whatever. Are there plans for any Frank Hannon band or solo touring, or is it mostly Tesla in 2024?
Man, I've had to slow down, bro. I mean, I'm 57 years old, going to be 58, and I'm feeling it. I really burnt the candle pretty hard doing both Tesla and Frank Hannon band solo things for like the past 20 years.
Yeah.
So now I'm really just focusing on doing Tesla shows, and only some special events, special occasions will I do anything separate. Like for example, this Almond Betts family revival show was a very special event.
Sure.
I was very honored to be a part of that, to play guitar alongside my brother-in-law, Dwayne Betts, and Devin Almond, and a whole family of like 20 other guest musicians that were phenomenal. That it was such a marvelous experience. We ended up at the Ryman in Nashville, and I played blues alongside Larry McCray, who's a blues legend. And he and I are going to get together in the future. We're talking about doing some stuff together, and I made some great friends. Unless it's something, special, I got to focus my time on my family and on
Sure.
Tesla family. So, but I'll
and
always keep recording and releasing stuff, like I've got a new single I'm going to put out in February. It's a tribute to Gary Wright that I did, and the video is all done for that. That'll come out in February. I've got a couple other songs that are unreleased, and I'll do the occasional jamming and sitting in with people, but I'm not booking any Frank Hannon band solo tours anytime soon. No.
Right. Yeah. But it seems like there's enough that Tesla's doing. And look, you mentioned the Ryman, and I know from having just cross-reference, I know Tesla will be there March 12th at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. So you'll get to be back over there. And Tesla, obviously, you guys crisscross the country, play a lot of shows. For people who maybe don't get out to the shows or they want to remember what it is, I know that just within the last couple months, you guys put out that Full Throttle live album, which I thought was an interesting idea, because it was like, let's put out the songs where we don't have live versions out already, so because I remember you did the Mechanical Resonance live where it was all those live, and there have been a number of live releases. So it seemed like it was a good idea for, again, for the people who've been fans for so long. It's like, oh, here's a couple songs that you haven't heard live before,
Yeah. Also, including our new songs that we've been writing, Cold Blue Steel and Time to Rock.
Yeah.
Two of our latest songs that we've written that are brand new. There's studio versions of those out, but now there's also live versions that are on Full Throttle Live.
Right. And we were talking about Aerosmith before, and there's a great version of SOS Too Bad that's from that as well, which that was new when I talked to Jeff Keith, but that version's great. And I remember reading in the notes about that there was a quote from you about how Aerosmith Live Bootleg was one of your favorite live albums. And I always thought it was great. And as we know more now, 40 some odd years later, it's one of the rare 70s live albums that's like 100% live,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's that record never left my turntable in 1978, man, or 79. It was between that one and Van Halen 1 had just come out. And if you listen to Van Halen 1, that's basically a live album. I mean, they were live in the studio. I mean, there's so much live energy on Van Halen 1. But getting back to Aerosmith Live Bootleg, yeah, I'm going like this because I used to listen to it with headphones and just stare at the photos on the inside of it and just dream about being at an Aerosmith concert. Because you got to remember, back in the 70s, we didn't have MTV. I mean, you were lucky if you saw Don Kirshner's rock concert, on TV at midnight on a Friday night. So all we had was the photographs. And on the inside of these live albums, the double albums, you'd open them up and it'd be some amazing photographs of Aerosmith or, Frampton Comes Alive, or, those live albums were so great back in the 70s. And yeah, SOS Too Bad on Aerosmith Live Bootleg was a huge influence. And that's why we recorded it on our live album.
Yeah, no, and obviously we were talking about sort of the enduring popularity of some of those artists. The first year I ended up going to any concerts, I always talk about the streak that I went on. So the first concert I went to was Alice Cooper in March of 1990 at a place called the Ritz in New York, and then the county fairgrounds near where I grew up. Within like a week, I saw Kiss on the Hot in the Shade tour, Aerosmith on the Pump tour, and Whitesnake, the incarnation that had Steve Vai in it. And so it's to have that out of the gate, even with MTV, it's like that's when you realize, like, oh, as cool as it is to see a live concert, on MTV, or at that point you could get a VHS of it. It was just like, oh my god, these bands are good on TV. These bands are great on the records, but when actually getting to see Joe Perry, Bruce Kulick, whoever Alice was playing with at the point, including Eric Singer, it was just like, oh yeah, you just like, I was 14 years old, and you're like, it just sort of opens your eyes and your ears even more, to actually get to see the bands live.
Yeah, it sounds like you saw some great shows, my friend. And going back to what you were talking about earlier about the music changing and when Alice in Chains came out and then things all changed or whatever, the thing that doesn't change is the live concert experience. I mean, I get chills right now. When I went to see Peter Frampton play this 6 months ago, just knowing that he was going to be standing right there on that stage and I was going to hear his guitar and his voice. There's something magical about being in the same room with a live performer. And, I don't care, MTV, radio, whatever, they can't take away that. So people can always go to a concert and see a live show and get that feeling. There's nothing that beats that feeling.
No, I agree. And, obviously one of the greatest experiences that I had in this year was that show, seeing you guys at the House of Blues in Vegas. So anybody who's going to be in Vegas in April should check that out. I've seen, the first time I saw Tesla was on the Psychotic Supper tour. I've never seen a bad Tesla show. It's always such a great time. I love, I can imagine that it's probably exhausting for you guys, but you basically, you leave it out there on the stage, and I think people really appreciate it. So I thank you, Frank, for taking the time to talk to me, and I'm glad you're still out there making stuff. I mean, there are plenty of bands. Tesla put out plenty of new albums in the last decade. There's a lot of bands who are just like, we don't bother anymore, and I love that you guys still have it in you, whether or not Blabbermouth wants to say, Frank Hannon says there'll be a new Tesla album in 2024 or not. It's fine. Whenever it is that you guys feel like you've got an album, I like that you just put out the songs. You mentioned that Full Throttle has a few of them on there. So I think it's great you guys are still creating,
Well, thank you, man. In today's world, it's a lot easier to create singles and put them out while they're fresh, And I know you committed me to a Christmas song, so I'll start chipping away on that. Got a bunch of other news.
Yeah, I'm going to put on my Google Calendar, July 1st, I'm going to have Jody, the publicist, reach out to Frank, remind him about Jingle Bell Rock. So you don't have to think about it over the next 6 months, but in the summer, that's when you got to think about it.
It might end up being White Christmas. I don't know.
That's fine.
It might be something different. I'm always throwing curveballs. So, music is like food. I like to cook, and I like to eat, and I like to cook. So people go, well, how come your stuff is so different? Well, I like to serve up some Italian food sometimes, maybe some Mexican food, some this and that. It's like a pizza, it's not always the same. You want to put some pepperoni on it, maybe some sausage one time,
Look, there's a reason that the Hawaiian pizza was designed, because somebody was like, oh, fuck it, just throw some pineapple on it and see what happens. It's not for everybody. Right. It's not my favorite, but I like that people are thinking, So let's go ahead.
You can get a Western omelet, you can get a Greek omelet, you can get a Spanish omelet. As long as it's got some eggs mixed in with there, it's going to be good. And with me, it'll always have some guitar.
Well, frankhannon.com. I believe it's Frank Hannon official on Instagram. Am I missing anywhere? Obviously, just go to Frank Hannon on YouTube. You can see the video that either you saw just now, or for our audio audience, you can check it out. Anywhere else that I should send people to, Frank, other than frankhannon.com, Frank Hannon official?
Yeah, Tesla the band. TeslaTheBand.com for all things Tesla related. Frank Hannon official with the blue check mark. please be careful for the scammers. There's a lot of scammers commenting on
Yeah.
there that are posing using our names and stuff. It's all I don't know. They're trying to hustle people for money. But
yeah, it's one of those things that you know, you as a fan, you would hate to be approached by somebody after a show who's like, "Oh, hey, did everything work out okay?" And you're like, "What are you talking about?" "Yeah, I sent you $200 because you needed to pay for a dinner bill in New York when you were on tour." You know, you hear about the stories that people get approached, and it's almost like, why are these guys? Why do people think that you're reaching out on Instagram to people? But you know,
I've had 3 or 4 different occasions with these female fans, and I noticed these scammers are always commenting and targeting the female fans that post comments on my page, and so they're going after the women because they feel like they can hustle them for money. And I've had a couple of them be very angry with me, like, "Hey, you took my money." I was like, "Wait a minute, I didn't take anybody's money."
Yeah.
Come to find out, it's these scammers, and people, you can always tell if they say, I love you so much, please send me a personal message and all that. That's when you know it's a freaking scammer. And just assume that it's a scammer anyway, unless it's got the blue check mark and it's my official page. Don't buy into it.
Right, exactly. If you want to help Frank, you go to frankhannon.com, you go to teslahtheband.com, you check out Tesla on the road this summer, this entire year. And we always appreciate your time, Frank Hannon. And of course, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year to everybody out there in the audience. And Frank, I look forward to, if I don't talk to you before next Christmas, the release of the Christmas song, I look forward to talking to you then, if not sooner.
Hey, sounds good, Christian. Hey, let's talk in February, because I'm going to have a brand new video for you then.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you now. I'm going to remind you like that. That's only 10 months until you have to put out that Christmas song. But yeah, I'll send Jody a message after this and make sure that we talk in February.
Jingle bell, jingle bell rock. Jingle bells swing and jingle bells ring. All right, man. Peace out.
All right. Thanks so much to Frank Hannon. And our audio audience is going to hear just a little bit of Fool's Delight right now. Thanks again to Frank Hannon.